What's popular, YouTube, and welcome to Lao's Top 20 of 2023. It's a very special day when we can contend with our overlords of HLTV and try to put together a more based list of who I feel like is in the top 20. If you want to know more about the criteria, check out yesterday's video as an introduction. But today's video, just as a brief review, is going to be the top 20 to the top 11 all at once with a little blurb about each player, why I think they've come in at this point of the list. And then from tomorrow onwards, it's going to be the top 10 all the way down to the top 4, and then the top 3 to the top 1 in one video. And on the same day, we're going to have the new Boxer store. It's all going to culminate right before Christmas, this magical explosion of content and stuff and physical merchandise and everything. It's going to be great. Okay, so let's hop in to the top 20. It's kind of like a magic school bus, the way we'd be hopping in. So coming up first, who have we got? This is somebody who's known as a funny guy of sorts, okay? Somebody who's been known for being really, really toxic. Somebody who's been on the cusp of the top 20 multiple times by my estimation. He's a guy who is known for his leadership. Some call a comedian. That's right. Coming in at number 20, couldnt. When you think of a big moment player, couldnt is one of the first names that pops into my head. When you think of leaders, not just IGLs, couldnt is the first or second name that rings synonymous. A player who, in the last few years, developed an entirely separate lane for heroic, being completely unlike his once dominant Danish rivals. In a CIS world of economy-centric CS, couldnt's heroic harkened back to the Fnatic era of CSGO that was both unreplicable and uncontestable with the right momentum. As an individual, he isn't one that qualifies to this list on stats alone. Many would argue that his intangibles are clear as day, but his reckless style and personal inconsistency deny him the prospect of outshining the true star players that we expect to see on this list. That being said, on merits of individual skill alone, couldnt has been without a doubt, in my mind, one of the most match-defining players as an opper. And while he won't be beat out by the newly elite in the role, the Shiros, the Zywus, the Monacies, he still deserves a spot at the tail end here in top 20. Coming in at number 19, it's your boy, the man who lost it all, but then seemingly got it back. A guy who's reinvented himself, sort of a rebirth of sorts. Somebody who took an enormous risk and a giant pay cut for a chance to win more on a weaker team. Now, who would I be talking about? Number 19, Elige. People thought it was the end when he shaved his head and took a pay cut and left one of the most powerful organizations in the scene. But that's when he proved he was concerned with winning and nothing else. Elige spent the first half of the year futilely trying to rediscover his place as an aggressive T-side defaulter once Yukindra joined the roster and shared half of his presence. And that's the primary reason why he's so far down this list, a really poor first 6 months. The reason that he's on this list at all, however, is because of his rebirth on Complexity under JT's system as a second caller with 2019 stat lines. Complexity were a team that lacked fight, and while they still have a sort of little brother aura in the tier 1, if you will, with the help of Elige as both a sheer force of will and fragging output that is undeniable, they have been on the precipice of closing out tier 1 events, and have staked their flag in CS2 as a through-and-through threat, and not just an overachieving NA team. Elige comes in at number 19 for me for his second half of the year recovery, spectacular confidence in taking the risk of joining Complexity, and absolutely undeniable debut in CS2 as one of the elite riflers in the world once again. Number 18, and this is where it already gets very interesting. This list was crazy when I wrote it out originally, but it's the one that I've definitely had the most fun with over the last few years. So many new names, and this is going to be one of them, okay? The player coming in on this list is brand new to top 20s, all right? He's brand new to top 20s. He's somebody who I think is irreplaceable in the identity that he's brought to the roster. He's an aggressive, fast-moving player who is a, latent star in the grand scheme of the many years of CS that we've seen played. He's somebody who in CS2 has proved to be an absolute force and has picked up a massive tournament win this year. The player I'm talking about in number 18, exertion. To position yourself as an exertion in today's game means you won't be the first pick from FPL to go to Navi, nor will you have the shimmering stats that you could have if you tried to slow down. But he could also not have that impact, and what Maus don't need on this team is another gym pat. They have that, and he does a great job in that role. Exertion is up front, a cylinder to the back line, and a surge of electricity in the mid-round. When you see him, the round is usually over, whether it's you dying or getting the kill. His commitment to live and die by the sword against any level of opponent carves out an identity for Maus that very few other players we can name right now can add. Of course, exertion can improve as one of the latent stars in the scene, but he will be one player on this list that has regularly played well deep into events, finishing with an above 1.0 rating and negative KD at the same time because of his sacrificial, aggressive T-side plays. But if you ask me, I wouldn't have it any other way. So if you thought this list was interesting, well, it only gets more so. Or does it? This is a very controversial player that I've got coming up, and it feels like that's a consistent theme on this list so far. He's somebody who was the best rifler this year until another rifler showed up. We'll get to that a little bit later. This is a guy who started out on the team that he joined with a horrible debut. And it took months and months for him to get good. By the time that 2023 rolled around, he was labeled as the best roster move that they could have possibly asked for, and somebody who overall has left his mark on this year, even though his future is somewhat uncertain. Coming in at number 17, Yabby. Yabby was the best rifler this year until Frozen was. Joining this team before Cologne 2022, he played the first 4 to 6 months on Heroic to a 10th of the ability that he displayed on Copenhagen Flames from where he was scouted. Yabby is an aggressive T-side lurk that on paper was a perfect fit for the individual autonomy and fiery nature of Heroic's brand. The main thing holding him down for me is his fight in some of the elimination games this year, but you can see that he recovered his mental game instantly after losing to Gamer Legion at Paris with a masterful finals performance versus the Paris champs at Washington. His future is uncertain, and his ability to adapt to both a new team and new game will come into question. But barring a short memory, there's no question that Yabby was one of the most talked about players in 2023 and one of the most impressive T-side aggressive lurks that we've seen in modern CS. Number 16. You guys know how much I love this player, all right? This guy is a Swiss Army knife, a jack of all... Oh, you already know. No, it's not that one. It's the other one, okay? This player is somebody who's got many more years left in his career. He is the best player on his team. It could be even better. He's someone who I've criticized for simply missing too many shots sometimes, and to be honest, has had better years, but still, coming in at number 16, Stown. I call him Mini Shocks, the Swiss Army knife of CS players and one of the last true hybrids in the scene. Stown is someone who I believe is held back by one of the most fundamentally silly angles that I can think of for why a player might not be realizing their consistency, and that is missing shots. As a sly fox of movement and unpredictable risk-taking, Stown generates the opportunity on the server to put up 30 a game. I stand by that. It's in fact, in my opinion, his CS IQ being so high that makes it so that even if he misses relatively simple shots sometimes, he invents so many chances to play because of his court IQ. I believe that while Stown is one of the very best, he could be much better. And so for me, he locks in at number 16 after a year with a good win, deep runs, and inextricable value to Heroic in his role. At number 15, I loved watching his story. Over these last few years, watching him develop, dominate at the top, have so much turmoil when it comes to the roster that he's played on, and gone through so much this year that actually right now, he's inactive. The player I'm talking about is an Opper with a reputation for being calm, consistent, and amazing in the clutch. Number 15 for me before I give it away any further is Shiro. After Relige, we're talking about the next player on this list that has been at the pinnacle of skill in his role and has displayed unreal layers of depth when it comes to nailing huge moments under pressure and making it look easy. And yes, it's true that there are games this year that Nafany was the one who was crucified for C9's losses, but it was also certainly true that Shiro didn't play to his ability each and every time. Now, regardless of the 1 or 2 games where it was the case that Shiro could have played a bit better, he was otherwise a complete monster in the majority of elimination games for Cloud9 in 23. He had one of the biggest fear auras in the scene when it came to people trying to bait out his shots, and absolutely embarrassed countless elite players in clutches time and time again. Shiro will finish this year with no LAN wins, marginally deep runs, and an uncertain future in CS2 with the AWP being significantly weaker. But that doesn't take away from him being one of the truly elite that is extremely likely to find his way back to the top. Number 14 is a player that I wouldn't trade all the maple syrup on earth for. Now, you know it's either 1 or 2 players. But this one has won this year. This one started out with a massive win and a very important one that ended in tears and an unreal close to the end of the year with the amount of consistency that came through. And if it wasn't clear already, coming in at number 14 for me is Twist. The 5-headed Hydra that is FaZe can be hard to summarize by role because of the modalic nature of each player's duties. On T side, the primary entries are Kerrigan and Rain by a huge margin statistically, but that doesn't stop Twist from having to attempt to trade down material as a lurk or speed up and explode to give their planner space to crush a site, whether it's brokey or otherwise. He's also put up some absolute magic in clutches, and while not having the most impressive year-round stats, he's for me someone that clearly plays for his teammates on top of having the ability to be much more selfish. I once called him aggressive, and he said he would describe himself more as explosive. Twist, in my mind, is burgeoning on an entry-type player, but is set up perfectly to be a high-acceleration trade fragger in most situations. I believe his versatility and discipline in not showing off constantly is his key strength, and his place in FaZe was perfect. Let's find out if he can do the same for Liquid. People cannot stop telling me to make videos about this player. Number 13 is La Familia, to the 14th player on this list. He's somebody who is a favorite. He's a fan favorite on this channel and somebody who's been talked about and I've been poked about and had to joke around about for all these years. He's somebody who, since joining this roster, has just never stopped. Never let off the gas pedal. Always been consistently good. Has never really had a rookie year. Just fit in perfectly and played with so much experience and veteranship that it feels like he's much older than his years. He's somebody who I've actually criticized for his passivity, but actually I think have reframed it in my mind to understand that he's being used pretty well, and his team has won a lot with his style of op in the process. Coming in at number 13 is brokey. Operas in CS2 have truly been tested, and game updates have really affected players' consistency event to event. Curiously, brokey has had an overall great onboard to new game, besides one weak event at the CS Asia Championships, which FaZe still won. brokey started out on FaZe as a rookie, but became one of the best clutch players in Tier 1 immediately after picking up the op, within months. Since then, he's never been discussed as young or inexperienced because his depth and range as an individual screams veteranship. The joke on my channel is that I canceled brokey week because his opening kill attempts were so low, I was disappointed to realize he wasn't as aggressive as I had once thought. But when I realized that his attempt/success rate was basically Shiro, I realized that the perception of him that I had was disappointing, but didn't make him a bad player. The way that brokey is used on FaZe is ideal, and that's what is a consistent theme with FaZe players. CSGO wasn't the friendliest of FaZe this year, but an Unreal CS2 and Pro League victory to start the year padded the middle enough to say, while inconsistent, they were still stable. Expectations were extremely high for FaZe, as they should be, and in the end, they met their expectations largely due to brokey's explosive mid to late round decision making and perfect chemistry with Rops and Twists. Now, besides Almanac, Number 12 is a player who you guys know is one of my favorite players, okay? This is also a guy who I've consistently rated higher than he's been on HLTV. Last year, he actually messaged me to say that he thought he was going to be lower on HLTV, and he was surprised that actually I had him lower than HLTVs for once. If you don't know who it is, this is somebody who I think is such a reliable rifler. He's somebody who I think could improve basically any team in the top 10, and he's somebody who has had another great year despite having a weaker major and sort of inconsistent on both ends, as well as a weaker onboard into CS2, but only one event to show for it. Coming in at number 12, Hunter. Hunter, as many of you know, has always been a favorite of mine and comparatively higher on my list than HLTVs, even though I don't ever aim to contend with their criteria directly. Hunter is one who, when I watch play, then reference the stats, I see very good stats, but somehow an even better player. One of the most reliable trade fraggers, almost never in my mind caught out of position or ever weakening a setup, and absolutely has his hand on the clutch at all times when it comes to changing tempos in a way that most pros cannot figure out. Although G2 had a weird year to sum up, Hunter was a demon in big games and had ultra heavyweight output at both Kato and Cologne, which he won both. He lands in CS2 as one of the riflers you think would have a better time, but with only Sydney so far, it's hard to say how much he's enjoying things and how much more he has to show. Number 11, baby. The final on this list for today before tomorrow, which we'll start off with number 10 and go down individually on the demo reviews like you guys, I'm sure, have wanted for this. Okay, number 11 is another opper, all right? And he's a new story, newish story. He's somebody who is an emergency replacement who became unbelievably good, as you can see, number 11 on this list. He's somebody who I think there are bad things to say about him this year when you look at some of the stats. A poor CS2 transition, some weaker elimination games, and a really bad major, but somehow just serves it up when it comes to the eye test and is still the best player on his team. Number 11, Sun Pius. Sun Pius under Snappy has had a T-side evolution that has made him one of the scariest two-way players in Tier 1. A device-like opper for ENTs with masterfully calm positioning and superlative consistency in CSGO for 23. His main downsides are his fight in elimination games and weak transition to CS2 so far. A weak major stands out as his worst event this year, but based on what I watch, I'm confident in saying I believe in Sun Pius as a top player with a lot of longevity ahead. Snappy set his team up to be successful and integrated Sun Pius so quickly, it's as if he's a completely different player to 2022. He comes in at number 11 for me as the strongest player on ENTs and one of the best oppers to round out this year of CSGO. All right, guys. That's it, number 20 to 11. And I hope you guys loved the video. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. It's an entirely new formula for the channel, and I'm sure Vivid killed it, of course. Tomorrow, we start off with top 10 and go down the list one at a time, all the way to top 4. And the top 3 will be in a single video on December 21st. And on the Boxer store, that's where we're taking emails. So make sure to sign up, because it's going to be most loyal, first serve, first come, first serve, and giving your email away is free. All right, so make sure you do that so you can be ready for the 21st. We got something special coming. Thank you so much for watching. Number 10 tomorrow. And as always, you always have enough money for a deagle.